Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
Ukraine update. Trump, who once tried to blame Russian invasion on Ukraine, who said Zelensky will get us into World War III, is now asking Zelensky if he can hit Moscow. That's how big this turnaround is. Trump's pivot this week reshapes everything. And who gets credits? Perhaps Melania, who reportedly snapped back at Trump after one of his wonderful calls with Putin. She said, "Oh, really? Another city was just hit." Or maybe Mark Rutte deserves credit. NATO chiefs calling Trump daddy. Whatever it was, thank you. Let's do more of that. Because when the West stands united, there's no dictator we can't break. And I'm looking at you, Democrats. Keith Kellogg himself touched down on Kyiv, and this week he was Kyiv's air defense. Not a single Russian missile or drone dared approach the capital. That tells you everything you need to know. Putin is terrified of the United States when it actually shows up. So the question now, will Trump's 50-day deadline for a ceasefire bring Russia to the table? Probably not. But one thing is certain, the weapons are flowing again. And sanctions will drive the next nail into Russia's coffin. This isn't just news, this is the front line of freedom. You're watching Ukraine Update with the Shills. I'm Slavi, your co-host. And let's say hello to the host of the Shills. Hi, Mr. Dawson. How are you doing today?
Unfortunately, not the best, but I'm going to try my best to keep up. I think, about to have bronchitis or something. I'm like heavy breathing to feel like I'm getting enough oxygen. We almost didn't do the show, but I ran to the store quick and got some cough medicine I could guzzle to get through, and I'll go get checked after. But I really like that Donald Trump has spun around. I just wish he wasn't so scared of the MAGA base that he'd put some money where his mouth is as well. But with everything going on with Epstein, I can see why he's really just dancing on his grave right now.
I mean, I would say this is a huge, huge win, but we'll get into it a little bit later.
Yeah.
Looks like I'm getting something on my throat too.
I hope I don't transmit over the microphone. That would be brutal.
Nah. Next up, we have Commander McMillan. How's it going?
It's going really good.
It's been a good week for sure. And next, we have Sakai from Tridents Against Tyrants. How's it going?
It's been good. It's been good. Been keeping busy, doing stuff online and offline to do what I can to help as usual, and glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you for sure. Well, let's get on to it. I think on the big turnarounds. What are your thoughts on the first on Trump's 50-day deadline? What do you guys think is going to happen?
Oh, go ahead.
You have to make a huge assumption that he's going to stick with that. The guy changes his mind, faster than most people change their socks.
I think eventually he's going to have to sanction Russia, if not in 50 days, eventually in 100 days. I mean, we were saying the same thing with weapons too. Here we are now, finally. So
I think what's interesting is if you look, the EU has leveled new sanctions, which are even stricter than before. So they obviously understand what needs to be done and are going down that road. I don't see Trump being getting on bandwagon follower to this thing. I think he's playing his own game, and right now all of this hinges on the Epstein crisis for the Republicans, because he needs to distract people from it, because his own follower, his own MAGA base are turning on him because of that. And I think it's important to ask, with a group of people who have in the past ignored tons of other sexual indiscretions on this guy's part, why suddenly now are they taking an interest in this thing, which is years old?
Yeah.
And I think this is the Epstein crisis is a last gasp push by the Russians to put him back in line. And I think he's
good
saying,
thinking.
up yours, I ain't playing this game.
Interesting.
because we have a Putin coming out, or not Putin, but Russia coming out and saying, yeah, what about the Epstein files? Let's see those.
Yeah, I mean, literally, why would Russia care?
Oh
It
shit.
has nothing to do with them.
I mean, of course they care. If it's, I mean, I get it, why they're doing it.
Yeah, the reason they care is because it does have something to do, right?
Yeah, it does, absolutely. And I think that a lot of the push that got him the election this time was from Russia, and they were expecting payback in terms of all the aid being cut and pressure being applied to force Ukraine to come to the bargaining table and give everything away.
Yeah.
And that hasn't materialized. And now he's actually starting to sow a little spine and say, no, we're going to continue to support Ukraine. I think Vlad is getting really desperate. That's why he's pushing this little Epstein game.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it the way it's played out, it does seem like Putin's at the point now where he's like, little bitch, you should have paid some of your debt by now, and you haven't.
Yep.
I think that's why it took so long for Trump to finally start supporting Ukraine with weapons, is because Russia had that over his head, not the Epstein, but that Russia helped him get elected.
I think that's part of it, but I also think that, as excluding Epstein, so put that on a separate table in the next room, all the other stuff that's on the table, his people are getting really upset because the tariffs are putting numbers of businesses, small businesses, out of business. Parts of larger industry is having a problem. All the deportations are causing massive labor shortages for companies that rely on cheap labor like that. And I think the base is starting to turn on him. And he knows that even within the MAGA cult itself, there is a fairly strong support for Ukraine subgroup. And so I think the whole I'm turning this spigot back on is in part him trying to placate some of that disgruntlement within his own cult.
Yeah. I can definitely see that. I think another big part of it, aside from trying to placate or appease to a certain part of his own base, because here's the thing, I legitimately think there are advisors to Trump who psychologically, socially understand his political base, the MAGA base, and all the different subgroups within it. I don't think Donald Trump does at all. I mean, legitimately, I think the man is in the dark on a lot of stuff on a personal level.
He's Bozo the Clown with the big floppy shoes going around in a dark room.
Exactly.
Fumbling.
By the way, the GOP support for Ukraine is surging. Now it's actually more than the Democrats. That's why I said that in the beginning. I'm looking at you, Democrats, because they retreated. Because when Trump supports something, it just shows that they have to do something opposite, which is, I mean, I knew that their support for Ukraine was political, but it's still the right thing to do. So I don't understand why this is happening, but I do. But it's clear.
Well, I'll say one thing about that. It might depend on which polls we're looking at, but it had been for a long time that among independents and Republicans, support for Ukraine was more at like the 40 or I think, like just under half of the country in the US. It was still really high. It was like 40 something percent support from them. With Democrats, it was like, I want to say mid 60 something percent. It went down after the recent changes with Trump. But what it really kind of did was level things out. So I'm now like, I think all three groups are up at minimum above 50% or at 60 something percent support. So, I mean, you are correct. It did go down, but I think it kind of just brought all three groups at a closer level to one another. So, I mean, all that to say, I don't care if you're a Republican, an independent, or a Democrat. If you are an American, the right thing to do is support Ukraine, period.
Absolutely. Here I have Democrats were less supportive, but 25% was GOP versus 78 Democrat support, and this was pre-Trump pivot. Now the Harvard-Harris poll showed 65% voters back weapons from, I think, GOP. So GOP is more unified than Democrats right now on the weapons, especially. But this policy is the most popular one in the United States right now, is the weapons support.
I think it's also important to note which weapons are being sent. This is not we'll trickle a little ammunition and some uniforms in. They sent 17 Patriot batteries, not interceptor missiles for Patriot, complete sets, the launchers, the radars, the processing centers, everything. That's huge.
17.
Yep.
Yeah. I think there was also confusion who's going to send it because there isn't like 17 of them, apparently. In the beginning, I thought it was Israel. That's why Israel, Bibi was there when Trump announced we'll send them Patriots, because Israel doesn't really need them. But then EU was like, whoa, wait, who's sending them? Like, what are we paying? And it's like, no, we didn't promise anything, or we didn't say it. But now I guess they're finding these 17 Patriot systems, which is great.
The Patriot is worth what, about 100 miles on each side of where it sits in coverage, or is it 100 miles with it in the center, Commander? Or am I even wrong? Completely fucked.
That's the radius. So
okay,
draw a thing from the launcher, 100 miles on either side.
So, I mean, 17 of those units can do some serious coverage of, oh, wow. Yeah.
But also there's offensive weapons, as I understand, which is pretty big.
Yeah. There's nothing that can reach Moscow, but there's stuff that can reach a lot of really important targets. Is that correct, Commander?
Yeah, and technically the Ukrainians do have some systems that will reach Moscow. It's kind of at the extreme edge of where they can engage. It makes more sense to engage targets which you don't have to hope that, oh, you know, the fuel isn't old and doesn't burn as fast as the other fuel or whatever.
Also, there's a deal in motion between U.S. And Ukraine. The U.S. to procure Ukrainian 800-mile drones, joint investment fund to nurture production, which is huge.
Yep.
Yeah, these drones are priced, I think, from 3,000 to 7,000. That's low-cost interceptors, and they're ideal for mass deployment. And yeah, they discussed reverse purchase, US-made weapons flowing into Ukrainian stockpiles. So it's a trade. I think it's one of the best Trump deals we have thus far. What do you guys think?
Yeah, another thing that I saw an article on recently, which I thought was interesting, is for a while it looked as if most of the US M2, M3 Bradleys that we had sent to Ukraine had been lost in the fighting last year. Apparently, the Ukrainians have salvaged and repaired many of those, and they're being used in counterattack role at the front, where the Russians have made a penetration. They're helping lead the charge there. And that stands out because apparently the Bradley caught the Russians by surprise as to how effective it is.
Yep. I also saw this morning, I was just double checking. They're tanks. I don't think they're Bradleys. It's the other tank that's coming from Australia.
M1 Abrams, yeah.
Abrams, yes, sorry. Thank you. Yeah, finally the US gave a go ahead, because they were, for the longest time, they were stuck because the US was against it. And now they got the green lights, and they should be in Ukraine within days.
My understanding is that they're actually already there. I don't know if they're at the front fighting, but
Wow.
they're there.
I hope so. Faster the better.
Yeah. Well, we have a question coming in from White Fishy. Question for Commander. What are chances Trump managed to get EU to pay for the Patriot missiles that were supposed to go to Ukraine anyways? He only allowed 10 of the 30.
It's hard to say, because being a US-made system that we've sold to many of the NATO partners, they have to get permission from the US to transfer those systems to another country, specifically in this case, Ukraine. If they've done that, then it means that that has freed up funds for them to buy new Patriot systems from the US to replace those systems that they're bringing over. Or they may have decided, and I don't know which way they're leaning on this, may have decided to purchase some other air defense system from someone else rather than the US systems, because they're concerned that the US is no longer a dependable provider. And we can all thank a certain orange God King for making that happen. Yes.
Yep. You know, I think it's still far too early to make any predictions, because who knows, a lot of things could happen. But I do sincerely wonder what the future of transatlantic relations, especially with regards to, well, not so much at this time in terms of sale and transfer of military equipment and technology, just because Europe has a lot of catching up to do, but intelligence sharing. I really do have concerns about what the future of that will hold.
Which I imagine everybody in the European intelligence services are looking at Tulsi going, Yeah, we ain't going to live well providing you information. We're going to hold a lot of these cards close to our chest.
Precisely. And building that trust back up, it's going to be hard.
Oh, yeah.
Even in the post-Trump era, Yeah.
As we used to say in the Navy, one aw shit cancels out 1,000 attaboys.
Yep, precisely.
Oh,
I guess right quick, is now a good time to do that announcement, Dick?
go for it.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, everybody, just wanted to make an announcement of a small, I mean, it is pretty small compared to the size of most fundraisers that we've seen here on this channel, or even the ones I've got over on Tridents Against Tyrants. But if you look in the chat, Mods dropped a link for a PayPal fundraiser. This is being done by a friend who has done advocacy work to assist Ukraine in Washington, D.C. to procure more support for Ukraine from Washington. And it is for 2 more 3D printers for a workshop. So actually, is it all right if I share the screen? Share my screen right quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. So this is the page on PayPal for 2 more 3D printers. It's almost done. 610 euros of 800 ends in 7 days. So less than 200 euros left. And yeah, it's being put on by Sophie is the name. Friend of mine, Ukrainian friend. Dear folks, I got a new request from Ukraine. My friend was a former techno DJ, a street photographer, and a didgeridoo maker in the past. Before Russia started the full-scale invasion. Now he's running a small workshop where he's not only printing a lot of parts for drones, ammunition, etc., but also prepares and improves models for printing, which is important by all the permanent improvements on the front line. He has requested 1 Bamboo Lab A1 and 1 Anycubic Cobra S1 model 3D printers who can help and assist in the process of a DIY defense initiative. Thank you, from Sophie. And yeah, I've got here. I'll stop sharing for a sec.
So wait a minute. He was a didgeridoo maker, so he went from a beatnik to beating orcs. I like that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I like that too. And there's stories like this across Ukraine. You've got civilians who are doing what they can to assist. I think I mentioned in the last stream last week about there's multiple websites like Prometheus where you have civilians in Ukraine learning how to make and assemble drones for the armed forces. So this is kind of like one of those initiatives. And so, yeah, if you can give, it's appreciated. It does help. And yeah, Slava Ukraini.
Rom Slava. All right. There's the link for you, Sarah.
Appreciate it, Dick.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because there was a question earlier. I've been in and out already, so I think I missed most of the answer to this. But let me just find it here because I'm stupid. It wasn't me that asked, could somebody explain the status of the Patriot system? So, yeah, I think we did pretty much cover that then, right? Yeah. I only caught the end of it, but it sounded covered to me. Okay, a couple of shout outs here, and then I'll probably have to catch my breath in a very, very real way. Johnny Negregard sends in 22 Norwegian kroner. Hello, Shillers. Slava Ukraine. Herom Slava. Thank you there, Johnny. On to the pile it goes. Petra Olsen with 269 Swedish kroners with love to Ukraine. And, of course, with love thou shalt be sent. Crazy Cat 1 comes in with a good one here. Russia taco, Ukraine taco, sanction taco, Epstein taco. Will he ever grow a pair? Doubt it, because he only cares about himself. Slava Ukraine. Good shout. And John Toth just enough in brackets. Love that. That's really well done. Has anybody heard anything about the apparently never-ending shell shortage? That's a good one to ask in for. Thanks there, John. What do you think there, Commander? Shell shortage? Yes, no?
I think that is a perpetual shortage. No matter how many shells get sent, there will always be a shortage. And to explain that, usually what higher command does is it imposes limits on how many shells you can fire in a given time frame. Let's say 20 in a day or something. If you have less aid coming in with more shells, then that 20 sinks to, say, 15 or 10 or just 5. Conversely, if a lot of stuff starts coming in, that 20 can expand to 25, 30, 40, what have you. So, yeah, it's difficult to say, are we getting enough ammo? No, you never have enough ammo. This is the reality. But we know that some stuff is being provided. I don't know if I've heard of any new U.S. effort to provide shells, but I suspect that if Trump doesn't start going back on his word and continues to provide aid to Ukraine, that more shells coming from the U.S. will be part of the aid packages.
Right.
We have a question also from Gen Consensus. Why did Hegseth cut off weapon shipments to Ukraine twice without telling Trump? Guess they answered.
He's probably just trying to prove to Daddy that he is his own man.
They answered the question themselves because he and his advisor Colby support Russia. They're hollowing out U.S. military. Yeah,
I think Slavi's hit it there. I think it's an issue of within the cabinet, there are people with varying degrees of how much they're beholden to Russia and will kind of work outside the normal circles to stymie efforts to support Ukraine. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think Hegseth and I can't remember the name of the guy who was working for him, who actually recalled that whole shipment that was en route. Yeah, I think they're getting their orders from the Kremlin, and Trump has now kind of put his foot down and said, nope, we're going to play it my way. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
Of course, as I've said before, with Trump, you never know how long that's going to last.
Yeah.
I don't think Hegseth is doing Kremlin's bidding, but this Eldridge
dude,
he is for sure a Russian plant.
With Hegseth doing a thing without Trump's approval, it does lead you to that there's more string pulls than just Trump's, though. I mean, who in MAGA would dare go against the leader? Well, the one that knows who's paying the bills.
I think I said this before, and I'm going to add allegedly on it just to prevent anyone who happens to be drunk on whiskey in D.C. trying to hit me with a slander case or anything. But I have always thought that when it comes to being either an asset versus an agent of the Kremlin, Trump has always struck me as someone who's more of an unwitting asset, whereas someone like Pete Hegseth, I don't have any proof of it at all, but it would not surprise me if I were to learn there were actually an ideological link or direct link with that particular person.
And I think it's worth saying it may not be direct. He may not be getting actual marching orders from the Kremlin. He may be getting them from, say, his friends within the Heritage Foundation or something.
Yeah.
Because we know that organization is definitely compromised by Russian influence.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That worries me because also Trump has a health problem with the veins.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And many people think that he won't make it the full term, and that DJ Vance will step up and be the next president. That part really worries me, because he may be even worse than Trump. And he's doing what's that? The guy that basically paid for his whole career. Not Elon Musk.
What's his name?
Guy. We talked about him last.
Yeah. Drawing a complete blank here. Damn it.
Yeah, I have it, but
Peter
the
Thiel.
guy with Peter Thiel with Palantir and the whole AI. So that's gonna be complete oligarchy, like, in power, if it's TJ Vance steps up as the next president. So
there's one thing that you need to understand, though. Vance or any of the other members of the cabinet do not enjoy the popularity with the MAGA base. They lack the charisma to unite that faction. And so the moment Trump exits stage left for whatever reason, if Vance or somebody else rises to that position, you're going to see the various factions that comprise that MAGA base start factionalizing in their own different directions. You'll have Christo-fascists, white supremacists, oligarchics, all of those people, and they all have different agendas. They've been able to kind of remain focused because Trump has kind of given that group a direction to travel in. They're willing to challenge him because he's so popular. But when he goes away, there's really nobody else that enjoys that level of popularity in that movement.
Yeah, no, I see what you're saying, Commander. I do agree with what you're saying. I wonder, though, because it's always astounded me, and maybe part of it is because he was on television. He was not super well. He was fairly well known among quite a few people, even before he ever ran for president, Donald Trump. But with the way that he is, I just find it astounding that there couldn't be some concerted effort to find another person who could recreate that kind of popularity. I mean, I wonder how much of it has been intentional and just took a long, long time to build up, and how much of it was just a viral. We don't know how he got this popular, but he is this popular, and it wouldn't be easy to recreate.
I don't think that level of popularity is something that can be created overnight. It takes time to groom people, get them used to the idea of, this is the guy who you want. He's your best buddy. He's your friend. He's the author of the deal. You know, all of that. It takes time to build that. And you aren't even seeing an attempt right now for somebody to start building, say, a Vance or...
I don't think they'd be allowed until he's gone, and that's too late.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense to me, because, I mean, even if others around him wanted to start preparing someone to be a successor, Trump doesn't care about a successor. He doesn't want a successor. He sees other people who get attention as, I mean...
Yeah, he's a narcissist. When he leaves... he doesn't care what happens.
No, he's set the Republican Party up for long-term failure, and they're all cheering him on.
Yep.
I think part of the Project 2025, not part, a big portion of it is done, accomplished.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's in part why you're seeing this push to kind of make him go away, because he's no longer somebody they're able to fully control. They got most of their agenda done, so they want to get him out of the position so he can't do any damage to the accomplishments they've made so far.
Yeah, once they got the whole ruling where Lady WWE there is allowed to dismantle the education department, they pretty much just went, okay, we're good, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
I think especially now that Trump is sending weapons to Ukraine. In this case, it's better that Trump stays and gets better.
Yeah, who'd ever imagine that the people on the Shills would be saying keeping Trump in power is probably preferable to the alternatives?
We've been
my
saying that. We've been discussing this. Even though it's hard to turn my tongue the way it does right now.
Yeah.
But we're here now, and finally we got what we wanted. Ukraine is getting its weapons, and hopefully sanction support as well soon. So
I'd like to see Trump taken out within the 50-day limit that he put on things. What a stupid ass.
Do we have any other news that we want to cover?
yes, we have a lot of news to cover. Well, in Kiev, there was a big government overhaul. The new prime minister was the big story, is Yulia Severodyanko. And she is the youngest prime minister Ukraine has ever had. She's the one who worked out the deal between the minerals deal between Ukraine and United States. This woman is very impressive, and she's young and just very forward. Then we have the new defense minister, which is Stefanishna, set to succeed Ambassador Markarova. And as we remember, here in Washington, they didn't like Markarova, especially when the whole fight happened between Zelensky. So hopefully this one will be much better, and United States is happy with this one. And then, I think we'll leave it there for now, but this is the smallest now government reshuffle. I think there's only 18 ministers left, which is in history unheard of. And yeah, it's pretty cool to see what's going to happen next. The parliament also approved 412 billion for defense, infrastructure, and building war economy. The target is 50% domestic weapons production in 6 months, 6.2 million reserved for drones. Sverdyanko initiated spending audits, deregulation, and industrial transparency reforms. Fantastic. Kyiv is not slowing down. Its government is doubling down on production, reform, and readiness. Because don't forget, Ukraine wants to be part of EU, and this reshuffle is great to get rid of the corruption, even though Ukraine has done fantastic job so far at already cutting the production. I mean, sorry, the corruption, not the production. We need more production, but less corruption, more production.
Yes. Couple of shout outs quick, because I don't want to forget while I can actually speak right now clearly. UTV and Ham came in with a $10 direct donation. Slava Ukraine. Hero, Slava, buddy. Thank you very much. Into the pot it goes. And we got Al Yorkie with a 20-pound super chat for the 3D printer. Slava Ukraine. Good shout. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to go back to controlled breathing here.
So then in the news we have, and we kind of touched on it as well, the EU and NATO, they strengthened sanctions and air defense. The EU legislation now caps oil prices at $47.6, blocks tech exports and sanctions 100 plus vessels, including shadow fleets. Great. Germany is financing Patriot stock replacement, and UK as well. Renewed interest in Sky Shield air defense cooperation across NATO and EU. European leaders engaged in flattery diplomacy, touched on it as well, because it works with Trump. This is to reset US posture, and they're kind of following Rutte, what Rutte did. Because, I mean, when you flatter Trump, you get what you want. That's proven. But yeah, the continent, Europe, is stacking defense and economic pressure. Diplomacy is practical and strategic, and hopefully they get it done, because the pace that Russia is producing weapons is insane, and especially Shahed drones, because that's all what they do. That's all what their economy, or whatever is left of it, is doing, is just producing these weapons to kill Ukrainians.
Yeah, yeah, it is horrible, and yeah, countering that, trying to choke it as much as possible, as much as is possible with sanctions. It's all incredibly important. And you actually just touched on something that has me concerned once. I mean, whenever the war, because time passes, maybe it'll be in 1 or 5 or 10, I have no idea. But whenever the war does come to a conclusion, with all of the money Russia has left that it's been pumping just into military production, I just think of all the wars of tomorrow, of the 2040s, 2050s, beyond, that are just going to be awash in, Russian-made weapons. It's horrible. It's horrible for Ukraine. It's horrible for the world.
It's even more so a problem because Institute for Study of Warfare, in their most recent breakdown of what's going on, probably 2/3 of their assessment was all about the Russian economy and what's going on. And to keep replenishing their forces, the government has had to constantly up the bonus payments they're giving to people who join the military. That in turn, because those are so lucrative, is drawing a huge portion of the workforce out of the factories and into, combat, such that the businesses are just, they're hollow shells. They're not able to do anything because they don't have workers to produce anything. And that means they're also drawing down very quickly on their cash reserves to make these payments to people to go to the front. So when the war does eventually end, the only portion of the economy that's going to be functional is the military side of things. And they're going to desperately need to replenish their cash reserves. And the only way to really do that is arms sales.
Yeah.
But, who's going to buy tanks which have an established record of sending their turrets, 150 feet in the air? So you have to really cut down the cost to get people to buy the stuff. And that in turn means when a country buys that, now has an inventory of 5,000 tanks, the people in charge are going to be more inclined to want to use that because they've got so much of it and they have to show some sort of return on investment, if you will.
For future warfare, will tanks even be needed with now drones picking up like crazy?
Yeah. You cannot hold ground with a drone. You have to put people in the trenches, in the buildings, whatever, to hold that. And to get those people delivered to that area, you need tanks, armored personnel carriers, etc., to move them there. The Russians have conclusively shown that putting them on mopeds probably isn't the best way of moving troops into a combat zone.
Yeah, there's more and more reports now that we're seeing that Russians, the orcs, are using all kinds of mopeds and like from World War II even.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have
ridiculous.
Mopeds, but yeah, just everything and anything really. I'm waiting till somebody is like on rollerblades or something.
That was funny.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the I don't know what they call them, but they have that big fat wheel and kind of a skateboard that's
Oh,
the hoverboard.
Yeah.
We've actually
Yeah, the
seen some
one wheel.
Ukrainians on it.
Yeah.
yeah.
We've seen Ukrainians on it just for fun and giggles. I remember in the
hey.
beginning of the war, but I don't know if
Sorry.
they're used for anything tactical.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to interrupt real fast to say we hit the 100% on that fundraiser for 3D printers. So
Nice.
big thank you everybody who donated. Much appreciated. Someone closed it out with the final 150 euros. So thank you very much. And I'll be sure to send an update for next week. Make sure I get that from Sophie and the others who are running that fundraiser.
That's
Right.
awesome. So happy to hear that.
Is Kaltenberg or Steve Walsh in the chat? Because you're my first suspects on closing that out. Definitely.
Sure.
Oh.
There's another in. Do you have something else?
I was just gonna say, Dick, are you doing okay? You good to keep going, or
Yeah, you guys keep going for a bit. I'm okay for a little while yet.
Okay. Commander, Slavi, you both good? Or I just wanted to make sure everything was good for Dick if we're gonna keep going.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Next up, we have a pretty interesting story that caught my eye, and it's two Chinese nationals caught spying on Neptune missile program in Ukraine.
Ooh.
So yeah, two Chinese citizens detained in Odessa Oblast, suspected of espionage on Neptune coastal missile systems. Ukrainian authorities allege they attempted to photograph sensitive sites and obtain technical data. Kiev says this reflects China's opportunism, trying to extract lessons from the Ukraine war while quietly assisting Moscow. Investigation handed to Ukraine's military counterintelligence. This raises broader alarm over China's interest in Ukraine's battle-tested missile technology. Yeah, it just shows that this isn't just Russia's war. Beijing is watching, learning, probing, and sometimes stealing. Ukraine isn't just defending Europe, it's defending global military balance. So I don't know, Sakai or Commander Macmillan, do you guys have any thoughts on this?
Not really.
All right. We'll sort through these news then.
Okay.
We have a Time magazine cover, which features, I think we have, yes, features the abduction of stolen Ukrainian children. Puts this whole thing on global spotlight. It's very important. This is Time's July cover story. The cover starkly displays names of at least 339 identified abducted children, symbolizing thousands more lost. The article highlights Russia's strategy of forcibly transferring children to erase Ukrainian identity and break family ties. Daria Zarivna, head of Ukraine's Bring Kids Back initiative, told Time that Putin is using our children as poker chips. ICC arrest warrants remain active for Putin and Maria Lvova Belova for orchestrating the abduction scheme. Russia's campaign isn't just about territory, it's about erasure. These children's faces sometimes confront the world with a simple fact. This is a war for the soul of a nation's next generation. On that note, there's a bit of a better news because Qatar actually brokered return of 11 Ukrainian children this week that were abducted by Russia. So thanks to Qatar for the mediation. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
There's just to remind that there's 20,000 confirmed children that remain missing in Russia. 20,000, and that's confirmed. I think the count is more closer to 100,000 that Russia stole and are using these children, which eventually will go to war against their own nation.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a horrible situation. That is an understatement. I don't know how to put it into words. How horrible it is at this moment. I will say bringing attention to the matter is crucial. So whoever at Time Magazine got that done, big thank you to that person, to make sure people are aware of what's happening. The worst part is, as this war continues, 20,000, and we can count maybe dozens or a few hundred maybe who are returned. It's a horrible situation because how long will it take to get sorted? Will it ever get sorted for all of the children? And it's a painful question because it makes you go down a rabbit hole of the worst case scenarios. All I will say is every family affected, every child affected by this, the blood, the pain, the suffering is on Vladimir Putin's hands, and the world can never forget that.
Damn right.
Absolutely. I also saw there was a story that Russia is pretty much grooming their own children of going to war. So just think how for millions of children, all of them are being prepared to go to fight. So Russia is raising literal military.
Indoctrinating the youth into a warrior culture is very, very common in authoritarian regimes.
Yep. I mean, they start them from, babies. You see like strollers and their toys are tanks and missiles. Yeah, that's Russia for you.
I mean, there's a reason why the only country militarily, officially sending troops on the ground for Russia is North Korea, because they do the same thing. North Korea, if you've ever seen the cribs or the schools in North Korea, pictures of all the cartoon characters killing Western soldiers and stuff, it's the same shit. It's I mean, if that isn't enough proof of how fascist Russia is, and the fact that being against fascism is something we all should be, or any form of authoritarianism, then I don't know what is.
I wonder, does China, do the kids absolutely have to do military training?
I think, well, Commander, maybe you'd have some more insight on this, but my understanding with China, it varies a lot, especially the levels of nationalism or early introduction to military culture from one region to another in China. I mean, but it exists, but I don't think it's on the same scale as it is in like North Korea or Russia today.
20 to 30 years ago, China did indoctrinate people into the military culture fairly regularly and early. Young men were required to do military service similar to what you did with, in the Russia, where you have to serve 18 months or 2 years, depending on your specialty. You're conscripted, basically. China moved away from that, and the Chinese military today is much more a professional army, kind of on the Western model. So it's people who volunteer to go into the military for career purposes. They haven't gone the full spectrum, so enlisted personnel are still largely short term. They come in for 4 years, 6 years, and then they exit. But the officers, they tend to be long term.
Yeah.
We should tell the story quick because I was kind of hoping Dunk would show up today, but he didn't. Dunk has just upgraded his Land Cruiser to a Toyota Land Cruiser, the proper big boy, to a new one. And he gave the Car for Ukraine people an ultra stupid low price, and they came and picked up his Land Cruiser, and it's off to get fixed up and be in the fight right now. It's going to be a Medivac truck because, well, it's a Land Cruiser, right? Bit more SUV-like. So, but yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very cool.
Medivacs are very important. And, actually, I don't know if it was discussed on a previous stream, but wasn't it June of last year? Yeah, late May or early June when we lost Pete.
Yeah. It's just over a year now, I think, right?
Yeah.
I think it's just at a year.
Yeah. So it's important, guys. It saves a lot of lives. Keep that in mind, please. And thank you to everyone who's helped with the Car for Ukraine. All that make the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, when Dunk found out what the dealership was going to give him in a trade-in, he was like, well, that's nowhere near as good as it should be for a Land Cruiser with only like 60,000 miles on it or something, right? So he called up the Car for Ukraine crew, and they took a look at it, and they offered him less, right? And then they came to an agreement to make it very inexpensive so they could just take it. Dunk didn't get a lot of money for it, so, he took a big loss on that for sure. But I mean, his Dunk's wife is totally just over the moon. Oh yeah, we're a part of it. This is amazing. So Oh God. Okay, hold on.
That's awesome. We do have a couple of questions as well. But before, I just wanted to do one more news before we go to the questions, and it's Colonel Ivan Voronich was assassinated in Ukraine. It's Ukrainian senior intelligence officer. He was shot dead in central Kiev. This was on July 17th. Initial reports suggest professional hit. No suspects publicly identified. Voronich was reportedly involved in counterintelligence operations targeting Russian sabotage networks. The killing comes amid rising fear of infiltration by Russian operatives into Kiev. Ukraine's SBU launched a national-level investigation. Security details increased for senior officials. This is a chilling reminder that Kiev remains on the front line too, even far from artillery ranges.
Sorry. I've got something to say on this when you're done.
Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no, this story I was discussing with a few friends of mine the other day, actually. And this is a situation where I don't know if that particular article you're looking at has all of the details. This is an example of espionage networks that are very much international, go across multiple country lines. My understanding is this was a Ukrainian cell, so a cell of operatives inside of Ukraine, part of a branch of an international terrorist organization. It was founded in the United States. It has branches all over in the U.S. and Canada, in Ukraine, in Russia, in South Africa, in multiple places. And I do believe that the assailants were neutralized by Ukrainian armed forces, by the intelligence service of Ukraine. But it just goes to show, when it comes to a war, especially one of this scale, it's all about what you know. There are many small groups all around that are involved at different levels. And I feel very much for the family of that officer who lost his life, and I hope that justice is brought to every member of that organization who targeted him.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some questions coming in From Sarah, has Russia invaded another area today? Commander Macmillan. I haven't seen anything about any other area, but for the most part, the big Russian offensive has failed.
It's still ongoing. They're making some gains in certain areas, but it's very similar to all the other offensive efforts they've done in the past basically 2 years. They are forced to basically drive with the infantry, so they're taking heavy casualties for minimum gains.
Then we have a question from who's poopin'. The EU sanctions are great, but I wonder what other BRICS countries will do.
I mean, I think they'll do. Sorry, I just realized my volume might have been down a little bit. I hope it's better now. I think they'll do whatever they need to stay afloat. I mean, the economy of Brazil versus India versus China versus South Africa, they're all very different from one another, even though they're connected through the BRICS economic alliance. Actually, one really interesting thing I remember hearing the other day, and it was from I can't remember exactly. It was from a Republican policymaker who was being very critical of, and I quote, he was saying China, India, and Brazil, but there was no mention of Russia or South Africa in his criticism toward the BRICS nations. It was kind of funny to hear him refer to it that way, leaving out two of the major economies. I don't know. I think we'll just see a lot more of what we have seen, attempts to bypass sanctions if it's worthwhile for the BRICS nations willing to assist in that process. And whether or not it remains lucrative or not, possible or not, that's all up to Western nations and how strict they are on monitoring, especially shadow fleets, as Commander had mentioned in our last stream.
Yeah. Quick thing here we got to do. It's happy birthday to Cheryl in the live chat. Have a good day. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
My special graphic. Had to use it.
Yeah, that's very special. I was just thinking, I think Russia's going to be, especially when these sanctions come, is so toxic to do anything with. India wouldn't want to fuck around with that, I know, but China, I don't know, but I know it will for sure end Russia. They're not gonna want to bypass sanctions just to do business with Russia. That's what I mean.
It's not enough. It's just not enough.
Yeah, I think what it is right now is that there's some benefit to them doing business with Russia because they get cheap oil, cheap gas. But it's not like they're trying to actually integrate their economy with Russia's to the exclusion of the US or the West, because they still depend very heavily on those countries for their economic gain. So it's a situational equation right now for them, in terms of they can make a profit, so to speak, for themselves by buying low on the Russian market, as opposed to, pissing off everybody else and then getting sanctions slapped on them. I think if the threat comes down that, hey, if you don't stop doing this, we're going to sanction you, then I think they'd back off pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the big part of the problem there, though, is, again, the complex interweaving relationships, because there are countries that rely on India for medicine, for pharmaceuticals, for example. There are countries that rely on, I believe, Brazil, I believe agriculture is one there, although I haven't reviewed the economy of Brazil in a while, so I could be mistaken. Anyway, point being that even just threatening to sanction directly a country, maybe they'll back off. Maybe they have unrelated things aside from the war where it opens up political jockeying. I don't know. But yeah, I think you're right. More direct threats might get them to back off, but it could also, I think some countries would be afraid because they don't want to damage relationships with other BRICS countries that that they actually rely on for cheap labor or for certain things they just don't make.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as far because they just had another BRICS forum, and from what I know, there's a lot of people. They're like, yeah, BRICS, the next best thing, but it's they're far from making it happen. It's a dream at this point.
Oh yeah, there's alternatives, and we need to explore those alternatives much more seriously. It's a competition, and letting the BRICS win is not an option.
No, but they're far from even winning. That's what I mean. And I've listened to people who are for BRICS, and it's like, yeah, but they have the people, you know, it's honestly because they have more people now from, I guess, the global South, way more than the West has. I don't know. I think they're further than, and they're fighting against with each other as well. So they're far from making anything happen, really. Next, we have a question. So it's a good one. Thoughts on the upcoming Czech and Slovakian elections and the impact it will have. Also, on Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey pact, and Turkey's access to the Caspian trade route, Russia controlled. It's a three-part question.
Well, I'll address the latter one. The Caucasus nations, former Soviet republics, are growing increasingly discontent with Russian influence, slant control of their economies and their political process, and they're pulling away from Russia. And Turkey, to some extent, is facilitating that just because it makes Turkey's situation better to have those countries not aligned with the potential adversary on the other side of the Black Sea. Yeah, there are pipeline routes and such that are supposed to be going through that region. That's why it's so important. That's why Russia will continue to contest any efforts for those countries to pull away from them. So it's theoretically possible you might see war break out in that region as Russia tries to use, proxies or even their own forces to keep those Caucasus nations in line.
Azerbaijan has been a lot in the news, and there's been big tensions between Azerbaijan and Russia. And yeah, Azerbaijan is not having it anymore. And I know Turkey and Israel have been helping Azerbaijan because the way it's strategically placed, it's next to Iran. So that also kind of puts, troops there for something.
One thing that I've found interesting is Azerbaijan has been in the news a lot, but also quietly I've seen more talk of, because Armenia used to rely until it was abandoned with the Nagorno-Karabakh war, the last bout with that, because Russia's fighting in Ukraine and didn't spare any troops to Armenia as per their military relations. Their alliance said that they should have. And so Armenia is looking more toward the EU and the West for security guarantees, economic ties. Azerbaijan is doing so, but I guess with a much heavier emphasis on Turkey specifically, because they're very close. It seems interesting that Russia's influence is just being frozen out across all of these mentioned nations. And really, we're just seeing new regional powers assert themselves. But I personally foresee an attempt by Turkey and Azerbaijan to be the new top dog and basically have say over that region if those countries were allowed into the EU, kind of like certain influence over places like Hungary.
You can see Azerbaijan's desire to be top dog in the amount of money they're spending just to drag Formula One there every year.
Yeah.
They're not making a freaking dime on it. They're losing huge every year.
Yeah. In any case, I could talk about it all day long, but I do think that bottom line is we're seeing a big push from multiple sides to get the Russian influence out of the Caucasus as much as possible.
And Azerbaijan has been getting ready for a very long time, and they have a strong military now to be able to do that as well.
Sounds like it for sure, yeah.
Yep. We have a question from They Exist. Maybe some update on Pokrovsk. The pundits are in conflict over the past 2 months, so I'm confused. Some people say it is very strong yet.
I rely heavily on Institute for Study of Warfare for the information I get. They're very reliable. They confirm through multiple sources most of what they put out. Their assessment of the situation in Pokrovsk right now is that Ukrainian forces are making slight gains. The Russians are trying to claim that they made big gains and that they've driven the Ukrainians out of the area, but it does not appear that that's the case. So it's a hotly contested area.
Yeah.
I have it on Pokrovsk as the Ukrainian troops solidify positions near Novopavlivka and push back probing Russian offensives.
Sure hope so.
Yeah.
Definitely. I'm getting close to my limit now. So we'll say another 5 minutes of questions or something and then do our wrap ups. That's about what I got. I'm probably going to go to the clinic and get put on an oxygen mask until they give me some strong medication.
Sounds like you need to.
Yeah. One shout out, Niles Knudsen in the chat, gifting out 10 Shills memberships. Thanks, Niles. I love the gifted memberships, and you just are Lord Zeus on Olympus of giving them out.
That's awesome. Next question is from M. Dow. Question to Commander Macmillan. Do you think that the war will escape into Europe, and should we be OB alert?
I say this as I do many things, assuming rational actors in these roles. And when you talk about people like Trump or Putin, that's stretching the bounds of rational actor. But I don't see how Russia could want to expand the conflict to bring the EU/NATO into the fight when they're already having such enormous difficulty fighting against just the Ukrainians. Imagine what happens if you bring in NATO into a conflict with its huge Air Force assets that they can bring to the fight. One of the things the Russians have been relying on that they enjoy an advantage in is that they have a lot more air power that they can use. You bring NATO in and that advantage disappears, I won't say overnight, but within a couple of days. So it takes either an incredibly stupid or an incredibly optimistic person on the Russian command structure to say, "Oh yeah, let's attack Estonia or something," thinking that that's going to do any good for them right now. So
Yeah.
I don't
like how
see.
you put that really.
I don't see it likely as expanding. However, the EU slant European members of NATO, I do think, need to be cognizant of the fact that regardless of how the war progresses, Russia still remains a very active threat to them. And they need to take more responsibility for defending themselves, particularly in view of the way things played out with the Orange God King, proving that the U.S. cannot be relied upon to come to Europe's aid should something occur.
Not anymore.
So, Europe is wise to be starting to rearm and consider.
And Europe can't go through this. Oh, well, America's on our side because we got the Dems in power. Oh, no, the Republicans are. They might as well. You got to arm up and be ready, because once you've seen it happen once, it's eventually going to come again, right?
Yeah. And I'll also add, I agree with Commander. There's no way of really knowing for certain, but I doubt we'll see the war directly expand to fighting with other countries neighboring Russia that are in. Oh, yeah. But I do see a potential for war breaking out in certain places like Republic of Georgia, just because it is quite vulnerable, or other parts of the Caucasus. Depending on how things go with Armenia and Azerbaijan, I could see war breaking out in the Balkans potentially if the right destabilizing factors were introduced. I could see proxy wars popping up in certain places involving Europe, but I don't see this war, unless it literally becomes World War III. I don't see that happening. And just like everyone else here, I really hope we don't see that happen. It's the same mutually assured destruction fear we've all had since the 1940s and 50s and beyond.
This morning,
I like you. Go ahead.
This morning there was big news. It was everywhere. I don't have it on my news brief, but it was an American NATO general saying that NATO can take Kaliningrad in without basically any effort.
That's an overstatement, but it's not entirely inaccurate.
I mean, there's a reason for it, because I noticed that it was getting blown up everywhere. So it's interesting.
NATO could take and hold Kaliningrad quickly in a blitzkrieg, similar to how, without the correct preparations beforehand, Russia could sweep in and take and hold some of the Baltic nations, at least temporarily, in a blitzkrieg. But again, that's before the assumption that the West had. Today, with how Russia is seen to operate in Ukraine, maybe that's questionable. But it's kind of a tit for tat thing. One side does that, the other side then feels they have to retaliate with similar.
Yeah, so you take Kaliningrad, and then the Russian Northern Reserves do a strike through the Suwalki Gap and retake it, basically.
Yeah.
It's not that one oblast which defines what's going to happen up there. It's an element to that whole strategic sector up in the north.
That's interesting. So would it be, I guess, strategic for NATO to have Kaliningrad or not? As
with any conquest, and I'm using that term very liberally here, it's a question of what do you do once you take the place? Right. Like, we invaded Iraq, we took the country, and then, how long were we tied down in an insurgency?
That's right.
And could something like that happen in Kaliningrad? Sure. Could it also be, we're welcomed with flowers and bread and salt as we drive through the streets because they're free of the evil Russian oppressors. Who can say?
Yeah, I would say you have to think of the war for the hearts and minds, which is something that was partially done, but not executed properly in a lot of ways in Iraq, and was basically just ignored in Afghanistan. If people in Kaliningrad don't actually want to break away, and I mean, like, you have to have like 60, 70+% of the population screaming for, we want independence or we want out of the Russian Federation, then I think the steps you would have to take if you were to occupy that land, if you are, say, NATO, and basically find a way to get the local population on your side, I think it would involve things that NATO would not like to do, because it would kind of harm its reputation as a defensive alliance.
Yeah,
like if you renamed the area Königsberg and suddenly you push for a German, and you could see quickly how that could become a PR nightmare very quickly.
People, I think, need to understand, yes, that province used to be East Prussia.
Right.
At the end of World War II, the entire German population was forcibly relocated out of the area. The population that's there today is like 95% ethnic Russian.
Right.
So
Exactly,
they're not going to be
so, I mean,
really overjoyed to see Western forces coming in.
Right.
exactly. It would literally become the rallying call of, look, we were, the propaganda from the Russian side, they would say, look, all the Westerners, and probably a hyper focus on Germany because of it being East Prussia in the past. They're Nazis. They took this, and they're occupying it, and they're, it's like there has to be a way there has to be an intelligent way in order to plant the seeds that actually make people want to break free from tyranny. And that is a lot harder than just dropping bombs and occupying houses and repeating at people, this is what you believe, this is what you believe, this is what you believe, over and over. It literally takes decades. Yeah. Yeah. It's a hard situation. Yeah.
For sure. On that note, let's get into wrap-ups and let Dick go to
Yeah.
I'm literally going to the clinic when we're done, because it's just escalating as I'm sitting here. It's not good.
Yeah. No, so sorry, Dick. Honestly, we got a little too into the converation.
That's fine. That's fine.
You get some rest, brother.
10 minutes isn't either going to kill me or make me better. It's
So, Kai, why don't we start with you? Any final thoughts, wrap-ups? Go ahead.
Yeah, we covered a lot of interesting and important topics today. Big thank you to everyone who helped close out the fundraiser for 3D printers. I've messaged my friend, so they can get me an update about all of that sometime soon. Big thank you to everyone who donated for the car for Ukraine, who continues to support this channel, the work that's done here, the guests that come here. And Slava Ukraini.
Great. Jadam Slava. Commander Macmillan, any final thoughts?
I would say keep your eyes peeled and see how the Orange God King does his, whether we're going to hold true to carrying out aid to Ukraine, or that gets withdrawn, sometime in the next week. You never know. And secondly, please keep corresponding with your elected officials. Keep the pressure on. Tell them Ukraine is important. I think, honestly, that's in part what's putting pressure on the administration to start pulling back on its, no more aid to Ukraine, and going forward with actually providing it. Is people are getting through to their elected officials saying, this is important. I don't want this to get sidelined. So please keep those phone calls, emails, texts, letters, what have you, keep those coming.
Pigeons.
Yes.
Very important. Yeah, I'd like to say thank you to everyone that showed up. Our fight isn't over, not even close. So please don't ease up. Keep calling your representatives. Keep pushing for sanctions on Russia. Keep demanding weapons for Ukraine, because now, more than ever, this is not a time to relax. Thank you to all of you who support this work, whether it's through donations, likes, comments, shares, or simply showing up. That's not just support, that's an investment into truth, an investment into Ukraine's survival, an investment into all of our freedom. Because make no mistake, we're still fighting the algorithm here. So, and we're still fighting the axis of evil in the information war as well, the disinformation, propaganda, and apathy. And every time you speak out, every time you amplify this message, you help Ukraine stand stronger and you help freedom itself endure. So stay loud, stay engaged, and stay relentless. This isn't just content, this is resistance, and together we are not done yet. So thank you. God bless America, and Slava Ukraini.
Heroam Slava.
Heroic
Good show.
Slava.
Here's a shout out to our team. We got Annette, Mexi Girl, Chris Lundy, Carpazian, the AI Alchemist, Liam Wakefield, Jose Cervantes, and of course, we got Super Chat Matt in the house as well. I can say about another 12 words and run to the clinic. So thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for the support. And of course, Slava Ukraine.
You know, I'm Slava.
I'm hitting that button.
Heroic Slava.
It's over. Go home. Go.